chapter 18. Now, when Jesus, remember last chapter, he said his prayer. Now, he goes out, of course, out to the garden and is arrested there. Now, when Jesus had spoken these words, that's the prayer he just finished, when he finished praying, he went forth with his disciples over the ravine of the Kidron, where there was a garden in which he himself entered, he and his disciples. Now Judas also, who was betraying him, knew of this place, for Jesus had often met there with his disciples. Judas then, having received the Roman cohort and the officers from the chief priests and the Pharisees, came to the garden with lanterns and torches and weapons. Jesus, therefore, knowing that all things were coming upon him, went forth and said to them, "Whom do you seek?" And they answered, "Jesus the Nazarene." And he said to them, "I am he." And Judas also, who was betraying him, was standing amongst them. When therefore he said to them, "I am he," the soldiers drew back and fell to the ground. And again he asked them, "Whom do you seek?" And they said, "Jesus the Nazarene." And Jesus answered, "I told you, I am he. If therefore you seek me, let these go their way, that the word might be fulfilled of which was spoken. Of those whom thou hast given me, I have lost not one." Simon Peter, therefore, having a sword, quickly drew it and struck the high priest's slave, cutting off his right ear. And the slave's name was Malchus. Jesus, therefore, rebuked Peter and said, "Put that sword into its sheath. The cup of the Father, which the Father has given me, shall I not drink it?" And the Roman cohort and the commander of the officers of the Jews arrested Jesus and bound him. They led him away to Annas first, for he was the father-in-law of Caiaphas, who was the high priest that year. Now Caiaphas was the one whom had advised the Jews that it would be expedient for one man to die on behalf of all the people. And Simon Peter was following Jesus, and so was another disciple. And that disciple was known to the high priest, and entered with Jesus into the court of the high priest. But Peter was standing at the door outside. So the other disciple, who was known to the high priest, went out and spoke to the doorkeeper and brought Peter in. And a slave girl, therefore, who kept the door, said to Peter, "You are not one of this man's disciples also, are you?" And he said, "I am not." And the slaves and the officers were standing there, having made a charcoal fire, for it was very cold, and they were warming themselves. And Peter also was with them, standing and warming himself. And the high priest therefore began to question Jesus and his disciples about their teaching. And Jesus answered them, saying, "I have spoken openly to this world. I have always taught in the synagogues and in the temples where all the Jews come together. I have spoken nothing in secret. Why now do you question me? Why don't you question those who have heard what I spoke to them? And behold, these know what I have said." Now when he had said this, one of the young officers standing by, "Racha, I knew you were coming. Just on island time."
Yeah, you know, right?
Now when he had said this, one of the young officers standing by gave Jesus a blow, saying, "Is that the way you answer the high priest?" Jesus answered him, "If I have spoken wrongly, then bear witness of my wrong. But if rightly, why do you strike me?" Now Annas therefore sent him bound to Caiaphas, the high priest, that year. And Simon Peter was standing and warming himself. And they therefore said to him, "You are not also one of his disciples, are you?" And he denied it, saying, "I am not." Now one of the slaves of the high priest, being a relative of the one whose ear Peter cut off, said, "Did I not see you in the garden with him?" Therefore Peter denied it a third time, and immediately a cock crowed. Now they led Jesus, therefore, from Caiaphas to the praetorium, and it was early, and they themselves did not enter the praetorium, in order that they might not be defiled, and should eat the Passover. Pilate therefore came out to them and said, "What accusation have you brought against this man?" And they answered and they said to him, this man were not an evildoer, we would not have delivered him up to you. Pilate therefore said to them, take him yourself and judge him according to your own laws. The Jews said to him, we are not permitted to put any man to death, that the word of Jesus might be fulfilled, which he spoke, signifying by which death he was about to die. Pilate therefore entered again into the praetorium, and summoning Jesus to him, he said to him, you are the king of the Jews? Jesus answered, are you saying this on your own initiative, or did others tell you about me? And Pilate answered, I am not a Jew. Your own nation and your own chief priests have delivered you. What have you done? Jesus answered him, saying, my kingdom is not of this world. For if my kingdom were of this world, then my servants would be fighting, that I might not be delivered up to the Jews. But as it is, my kingdom is not of this realm. Pilate therefore said to him, so you are a king? Jesus answered, you have correctly said that I am a king. And for this very reason I have been born. For this I have come into the world, to bear witness of the truth, that everyone who is of the truth will hear my voice. And Pilate said to him, what is truth? And when he had said this, he immediately went out again to the Jews and said to them, I find no guilt in this man, but you have a custom that I should release someone for you at Passover. Therefore, who do you wish that I should release for you, the king of the Jews? Therefore the people cried out again, saying, not this man, but Barabbas. Now Barabbas was a criminal.
Isn't there a version that says that Jesus put the ear back on the man? And this having happened to him, why was he not ever mentioned again as becoming his follower? Because,
Maybe he didn't.
Yeah. Something like that happening to a person certainly would have.
We put things on all the time nowadays. Nobody worships the servants that do.
Well,
Well, really, that depends on the amount of hatred that person had at that moment. I mean, he was,
Well, I'm going to look at it a different way. I don't disagree with you, but I think there's a great grander point there. And that is, it's an old Chanarine cliche that I've used for many years, and that is zeal without intelligence can become a dangerous thing. And, it's like two robbers that rob a 7-Eleven and shoot the clerk. And, crime's been committed, people call it in. There's 20 cop cars out front and 20 men with their guns drawn at the front door of the 7-Eleven when the two robbers come out. And they say, drop your guns. Now, if they were to raise the gun and shoot at the police officers, what would happen? It would be a massacre. Both those robbers would be shot into 100 pieces. That's what's happening here. The zeal of Peter to defend Jesus is admirable, but reckless. You're surrounded by soldiers with spears and swords drawn. They are there for one purpose, to apprehend someone whom they consider to be a threat, and one of those minions of that threat yanks out a sword and swings it. I don't think he was aiming at the guy's ear. I think he was aiming at the guy's head, and like normal reaction, anybody was, trying to jerk out of the way, and caught his ear and cut it off. I think Peter was going, if I bust this guy's head open. And that's why Jesus quickly says, sheathe that sword. And in Matthew's, he does heal the ear. And if you live by the sword, you'll die by the sword. Zeal, religious zeal for Jesus, he says, without intelligence is a dangerous thing. I forget who quoted it, but somebody said in regards to the atom bomb back in the 40s and 50s, that wasn't the most dangerous weapon in the world. The most dangerous weapon in the world was the Holy Scriptures in the hand of an unscrupulous man. He could alter people's lives, he could destroy people's lives and make himself rich in the meantime. Basically, zeal for God without learned intelligence behind it is a dangerous thing. Kind of like a car out of control heading for a crowd of people. There's nothing wrong with a car. There's nothing wrong with a crowd of people. But the fact that it's heading for those people out of control is a problem. And so often that's what the minister becomes. And especially in bigger churches. They just, anything goes. And throughout history, I think that throughout the history of Christendom, it bears itself out over and over again. You see some, going to war for the name of Christ and killing these guys for the name of the Spanish Inquisition. How many innocent people were slaughtered under the name of Christ? That's insane. Well, just like the Jews are doing, it's more expedient that one man should die for the whole nation and preserve our position and our power. That's what this is about. I know we blowing those things off. It's not rockets. All right. What strikes you in this chapter? And actually the next chapter as well. What strikes you in this chapter?
Well, I think that it's people without intellect doing things.
Well, it is.
Arresting Jesus.
It is the beginning.
Using his sword.
It is the beginning
Of final exam.
of the final exam. Which substantiates Jesus' statement or proclamation earlier. What you do quickly. What you do, not what I'm making you do or what I'm asking you to do. What you have decided to do. This is second person possessive. Second person possessive. It means it's your decision. You've weighed the evidence, you've considered the alternatives, and you've made a decision to go in another way. And Jesus said to Judas Iscariot, what you do quickly. Make your decision and then act upon it. Now, granted, it was a poor decision, but it was a decision. I mean, if there's anything to be admired there. This is the question of all of life. This is the question that John began way back here in chapter 1. What do you want? The light shone in the darkness, but the darkness didn't want it. It preferred the darkness. At first it didn't understand the light, that's understandable, but it wanted the darkness. However, for as many who would see the light and come into the light, he gave them the opportunity, or the power as we translate it, to become sons of God, or children of God. To draw near to the Lord as was intended for Jesus' coming. It would be a long and arduous journey, which involves much learning. But ultimately, it will need a decision. What will you do? Whatever it is, do it. Do it quickly. What will you do? The teaching is over. The intimate learning is over. The Last Supper is over. The prayers have been said. The benediction have been said. They sang the hymn. They went to the garden. Jesus sits in his chair. He puts his feet up on the couch and says, now let's wait and see what the world will do. Everything that needed to be said has been said. Everything that's needed to be decided will be decided, but not by me. fall squarely on the shoulders of each and every person. The characteristic of this chapter I'm trying to get you to see is just this. All the individuals involved in the decisions they are making concerning this Jesus. Well, first and foremost, you got the Pharisees. They obviously have already made their decision. In fact, they're not only created their own prophecy, they're going to live up to it and substantiate their own prophecy by making it happen. That one man should die for saving the whole nation. This man, of course, is Jesus. And in killing him, we'll put this Christian nonsense to rest, and we can get back to business as usual in the manner of which we have practiced the whole of our lives, i.e., crooked religion, unscrupulous men with the scriptures in hand. They've already made their decision, and they've sent the soldiers to back it up, guising it as prophecy. Did not Caiaphas prophesy that one man right before the whole Sanhedrin, before all the priests, Pharisees, and Sadducees? God's given me a vision. That vision is that one man will die for the sake of the nation. How convenient. How convenient. So he's making it happen. So he can go back to the Sanhedrin and say, see, I told you I was right. It was a message from God. No, it wasn't. It was a decision of self. God won't make your decision for you. He'll give you an opportunity. He'll show you the alternative. That's the world. God won't make your decision for you. He'll give you an opportunity, and He'll show you the alternative. In every case, Jesus, the whole cycle of things we did. He showed you what He did. He usually got attention by a miracle. He showed you what He did. He told you why He did it. And then He left it up to you. Every single cycle we went through. He said, this is why I'm here. This is your alternative. What do you want to do? Make your decision. Everything. All the way from. Because every time you make a decision, you grow a little bit. Every time you consider alternatives, you use that brain matter, you grow a little bit. Either toward God or away from God. You know, I make decisions every day now. And I don't think twice about them half the time because I'm 61 years old. But the decisions I'm making today, I would have never even fathomed when I was 6 years old. First of all, I didn't have the rationale power to do those decisions, reasoning power. Now I use it as if simple as natural as breathing, right? What's changed between me at 6 and me at 61?
Knowledge.
First and foremost, knowledge. I know more now than I knew at 6.
And practice.
Experience. I've experienced more now. If I step this way, make a decision, and it hurts or it, destroys me a little bit somehow, then I realize that's a bad way to go. So what do? Step back. Let's try this way. That's called learning, folks. Practical life lessons. We call it object lessons in the Bible. Object lessons. If I walk into this wall and bang my head, I probably ought to tell myself, don't hit that. If I walk through this soft little meadow of grass and it tickles my toes and it makes me feel light and fluffy, then I can tell myself, this is a good way to go. Oh, or I could bang my head in the wall again. That was kind of interesting. I'm not being simple. I'm just trying to say every decision we make in life grows us a little bit either to the better or not to the better. You see that big, beautiful Whopper on it picture? And you order it, and it comes out and it's a little flatted, nasty, raggedy thing with brown lettuce leaves hanging off of it, and it tastes kind of sour. What are you going to say to yourself? You got a decision to make. You're going to eat that thing or not? You You might say to yourself, this smells funny. I don't think I'm going to eat it. Why would you make that? Well, because somewhere, somehow, you tasted something that wasn't so good, and what happened? You were sick for a day, or more. So you've come now to the point where you said, I ain't eating that. So you learned something. Now, if you go ahead and say, oh, you did anything, well, then you're just stupid. But that's your right to do that. Final exam. God will not make your decision for you. You've got to do that, and you will. Scripture is very, very stern about that. You will make that decision. As long as you have breath, says the prophets, says the psalmist. As long as you have breath, you have reason, or at least opportunity, to go down this path. As long as you have breath. But when that breath runs out, then the decision has been made against you. One way or another, you're going to make a decision about God. Either in this life or by your death, but one way or another, a decision will be rendered. Then God will render His decision based on your decision. It is appointed to each man that he should but die once, after which he's got an appointment, which we told, I love that part, sure, he will keep. Whereupon the Lord shall render a judgment, a decision. Depart from me, for I never knew you. Or well done, good and faithful servant, enter into the rest of your Father. No ifs, ands, or buts. You're going to be shown the same two alternatives on that day. This is the Lord's way. This is your alternative. This is what you've chosen. Off you go. Or, this is the Lord. That's the alternative. You've chosen the Lord. Well done, good and faithful servant. Come on in. So, John has taught us about it. What do you want? What do you want? He has taught us. He has taught us. He has taught us. Then he got real specific with his boys. Then he sanctified the whole thing with his prayer. And now we begin the final exam as to who's going to do what. Evidence that demands a verdict, so to speak. That's how Josh McDowell wrote his book. Really patterned after this book here. The evidence has been presented in a general and a specific, been exemplified the whole way with miracle after miracle after miracle after miracle. It's been explained the whole way with explanation after explanation after explanation after explanation, and it's been given an opportunity the whole way to sign on or sign off. Evidence that demands a verdict. What will you do? I can't make that decision for you. You will have to make that decision. But whatever it is, do it quickly. Judas was the first to have made that decision. And now they are all falling in place. First, the Pharisees. The guards and surrounding cast, including Malchus, the guy that got his ear cut off. We don't hear anything about him because probably nothing ever happened with him. He blew God off just like anybody else. He was just a slave anyway. He was there serving, making sure, observing, going back to tell whoever. Oh, Peter's in here too. We see Peter make a very blatant decision as he fulfills a prophecy too. Not one created by himself, but one predicted by his Savior, or could be Savior. You will deny me 3 times. And what does he do? Not even realizing it. He denies him 3 times, and it's evident by the fact that he goes out and weeps bitterly, now knowing that he has done and failed Jesus, just as Jesus said he would. Even though at one time he promised Jesus he would fight till his death for it. Jesus said, no, you don't. I don't need heroics. He tried to show us heroics in the garden by pulling a sword. That wasn't heroics. That was stupid. That was zeal, yes, but without thought, without intelligence, without a grain or an ounce of common sense. I don't need reckless idiocy. And I sure don't need Hercules. What I need is the quiet soul willing to listen to God's way of doing things. What I need is the faithful student that studies, even though he lacks ground understanding, he's still a part of the equation until someday he'll answer it right. Sometimes Christianity takes a lifetime. Sometimes it's not so long. Happens much quicker for a few. It's different for everyone. There's no one size fits all in Christianity. You know why? Because as far as I know, there's only one cucaracha on this earth. I don't know of any other rachas save this one. And if there was another racha, even if she had a twin sister racha, that would be what? Rachos? What's the plural of racha?
Rachas.
Rachas. Even if there was a rachas, dos rachas, identical, even if there was identical dos rachas, they would still have it one individual aspect. They're fingerprints. There's a difference there. There's no such thing as an identical twin. Pretty much everything else looks the same, but there it is, the stamp of God that says, I am me. And the other one says, no, I am me. We're very similar, but God knows the difference between us. The faithful student. The single decision. And Peter weeps bitterly because I believe he thinks he blew it. Lions. He tried. He stood tall and said, I'll follow you to the death. He tried to prove that in the garden, and Jesus said, I don't need reckless idiocy. I don't need Hercules or heroics. I need the quiet student that will listen to the Lord. After this is all said and done, we're going to see John come back to Peter on chapter 21 and ask this question again 3 times to Peter. Peter, the world asked you 3 questions. And you answered, you failed miserably. Now I, the Lord, want to ask you 3 questions. Do you love me? He gets a makeup exam. Because knowing the impetuousness of this idiocy, Peter, the Lord said this is not his real heart. His heart is the quiet student, or will be. Right now, he's still in this delusion of grandeur or whatever. But it's not what we need now. On the other hand, there's one more there. Put him in red. John, the disciple beloved of Jesus, who also follows him into Caiaphas' house, or Annas' house, and comes out and gets Peter. And they go in and they watch. And we end up seeing John where? He's down here at the crucifixion, isn't he? No heroics. John doesn't promise to do anything. John doesn't pull out a weapon and try to shoot anybody. He just quietly goes along, faithfully following, completely trusting, and unworried about himself the whole time. To go into the Pharisee's house, to go into the high priest's house, and then to follow Jesus to the Praetorium Guard, and from there to the cross. That man had no fear of the world. He saw the Lord. He saw the alternative. He chose the Lord. And in faithful allegiance, John goes all the way. That's probably why we have this account in our Bible, unlike the other three Gospels that just mention the crucifixion in general terms. Because it was John who was there, who heard the interview of Pilate, who heard the interview of Caiaphas, who heard the defense and the desire of crucifixion from the high priest. John heard it. He recorded it because he was there. He heard it. John follows faithfully. And maybe he was scared. I would like to think he was, because I sure as hell would have been. But he loved Jesus more than he feared the world. Something took him all the way to the cross. So much so that even at the cross he was honored by Jesus when Jesus spoke to him about Mary and said, "Behold your mother. Mother, behold your new son," so to speak. In other words, in the Jewish tradition, Mary would have no male heir. Joseph, the father, was long since dead. Jesus is dying. Mary would have to give up her property, her home, her everything. She wouldn't allow to own that stuff. She'd be a widow on the street trying to find a way to eat. Jesus said, "John, behold your mother. From this day forward, if anybody asks, you are her son." Jesus took care of her right there. It wasn't just a moment of sentiment, it was a moment of trust, of faithfulness, of care. John had proven himself by this point a follower of Jesus, and he said, "Take care of Mary for the rest of her life, all that she is." And he does. No accident when you get down here that John was the privileged disciple to see the revelation, to see God's plan for all the earth. Nobody else saw it until after they were dead. But John did. Do you think that was by accident? I don't think so. I think it was by God's spiritual design. This man was the first to answer the question correctly. And mean it. I was thinking on the way to church this morning of all the people we have that come casually, one in particular, when he feels like it, a couple times a year, usually Christmas Eve and Easter, and maybe another time if we're having a picnic or something. And I thought, these people have no place in the kingdom of God. And I thought, oh, Tom, you're not in the judgment business. You're not allowed to make that decision. And my spirit caught me quickly, and I said, "You're right." But in all honesty, I just don't see that as faithfulness. God did not take salvation lightly when he sent his own son to die a bitter, horrible death. Why would he honor those who take that sacrifice lightly? As if it doesn't matter. That's no more than Judas did with 30 pieces of silver. I don't know. But I know I'm not allowed to judge, so I need to ask God's forgiveness for that thought. But it just kind of, wow. How many people get up this morning, get dressed, get the kids bathed and fed, and you know what a pain in the rear end it is to take care of 8 little babies, or 10 little babies, or 12 little babies or whatever, and get them all in the car, it's like herding sheep, and get them all strapped in, and just get them to church. It's massive work, but they do it. And they get to church and they gotta unbuckle everything, herd them out, let them run crazy for a couple of hours, trying to learn stuff about Jesus. Start this journey. And then herd them all back into the car. Then lunch, you gotta get home and make them all lunch. I mean, the effort alone on some people, and yet others who have no children, no extra burdens, just themselves, can't make it but twice, 3 times a year. I believe you. No, you really don't. Not according to scriptural criteria. Because to believe in Jesus, first of all, means you have a knowledge of Jesus. Second of all, you've made a decision for Jesus. And third of all, to live faithfully to that decision, i.e., go to the cross. Go into the house of Caiaphas. Go into the house of Annas. Go into the very Praetorian Guard of Caesar. This is the one that Christianity is failing on, right here. I can guarantee you every single one of the apostles knew about Jesus Christ. Some of them even boasted a decision. I will die for you. Like Peter. Jesus' answer is, I don't need heroics. I don't need Hercules. I don't need reckless zeal or idiocy. I need a faithful, understanding, but genuine believer and follower. Here's your great contrast right here. The Christian that loses perspective, the Christian that follows fully in understanding. These are 2 key elements. But Jesus will not lose this one either. So he gets a second chance. I think Peter really wanted a second chance, as his tears. A big, strong-hearted fisherman wept bitterly. That means crying uncontrollably. How many men do that? Very few. He knew it. He knew it the minute he did it. He knew it the minute he said it. He knew it the minute that stupid rooster crowed. All was lost for him. Not for John. But all was lost for him. At least he so thought. Not so. His heart was in the right place. It's just that, see, Peter had this impetuousness about him. The leap before you look kind of sinner, The kind of guy that goes shopping, buys something, thinking it's really cool, and then wishes he never had. Anybody ever go through that before? Yep. And then you ask yourself, why did I do that? I can tell you why you did it, because you were reckless. You got emotionally involved, you got all hooped up. I'm telling you, I shouldn't tell you.
Tell us.
Don't start something now.
True story. Camp meetings up in Kentucky in the backwoods, the lanterns hanging in the tents and all that. Preachers, Brother Love's Traveling Salvation Show. And I guarantee you there'd be hundreds under these tents and chairs all set up, little folded chairs. 99% of them be women. And you say, well, where are the men? Well, they're all standing around outside the tent. They're right here. There's the tent. The women are all packed underneath there. The men are all out here by the cars. They're just standing around smoking cigarettes and drinking beer and whatever else they want to do.
Moonshine.
They brought their women. They brought their women that go to church meeting. They aren't physically involved when they go to church meeting. They're all standing around by the cars. But they know the women are going to get so hooked up in these things and so emotional that they can take advantage of that. All they got to do is say a few, praise the Lord, I'm glad you're feeling great. on top of the world and the prettiest girl I've ever seen. Oh my, there you go. And you said, Tom, that ain't so. Oh, yes, it is so. If you've ever been to a Kentucky mountain holler camp meeting, it's exactly what you see. Pack up the babies, grab the old ladies, because everybody goes, even the men. Why? Well, because the men are looking for some whooped up women. And they get them whooped up in there. Brother Love's traveling salvation ship. Well, I think Peter was one of those that got caught in the getting whooped up. And he made a bad decision. That's probably many of these ladies do. Of course, the next camp meeting comes to town, they'll have another little baby in their arm. And Jesus knew that. This was not a real decision for Peter. Not here. John, very quiet, very calm, very collected. The one who laid and leaned against Jesus during the Last Supper. Did he fear the Pharisees? Sure he did. Did he fear the church? Sure he did. Did he fear the Roman soldiers? Sure he did. But he loved his Savior more. Then we have one more character. We have time. Oh, we are. One more character. Who is it? Pilate. The seeming would-be pinnacle of authority in all the land. What does he say? IDC. I don't care. Not interested. Indifference, the big I. You know what? God can deal with ignorance. If you're the stupidest person on the planet, the Lord can teach you. That's all that John is about. If you're damned and determined because you ain't never done it that way before, and you're arrogant, God can deal with you. He can smack you with an old salmon or something. Pow! Right upside the head. And keep smacking you with that salmon until you realize to stop being an idiot. And try doing it his way sometime. Actually, Peter got hit with a rooster. But nevertheless, same concept. He can deal, and he will deal with ignorance, because anybody can be taught. He can teach my grandmother fly B-17. That Patton said that. I can teach my grandmother fly B-17. That's no magic. I need somebody to get these clouds out of the way so we can get them off the ground. That's a true story. God can teach you if you're ignorant, and God can tame you if you're arrogant. God will not tolerate you now or ever. Ever! If you are indifferent. He'll deal with the I don't believe. Jacob had a little problem with that. He can deal with the Gideon had a little problem with that. But he won't deal with it. Yes, Lord. If I have time, get back to me, God. How dare you stand in the presence of God the Father Almighty and take him, or worse, his son and his sacrifice lightly? Pilate had one redeeming quality. He asked, what is truth? Because Jesus came to bear witness of the truth. And Pilate screamed, what is truth? But he didn't stay there to listen to the answer. He immediately left the room. You know why? Because he didn't really care. And the greatest opportunity in eternity just passed him by. Kind of like that Mummy show. You ever see that Mummy show, the first Mummy? In the end, where she reads that incantation or whatever, and the chariot comes down the stairs and runs over the mummy and keeps going. And the mummy's still standing there, but his spirit went with them. And he was no longer the super mummy that the mummy was supposed to be. He's now just a plain old man, slightly fat and bald. And then the good guy, can destroy him. doesn't mean anything to you. Well, anyway, that's what just happened. That's what just happened to Pilate. God's chariot swung low, and that opportunity for him to find eternity just sailed on by, never to see it again or to repeat it again. Well, out of all these people, they failed. He seemingly failed. He failed. One got an A. Scripture tells us that of 10, only 3 will really give me any serious concern. And of those 3, only 1 will follow me to the cross. Jesus told a parable once about the soil. We were the soil, by the way. 3 fields, total crop failure. One field had even variant that did produce a little bit, had variance. Some 30, some 60, but a little bit 100%. Let's go all the way back to Genesis, when the Lord walked in the cool of the day with Adam and Eve, till they decided to be Adam and Eve of themselves, no longer of the Lord. Then they did. And then Jesus and God came walking and said, "Where are you? We hid ourselves because we were naked." Really? Who told you you were naked? Did you sin and do what I asked you not to do? Turned your own way against me? She did. Of course, she would have stood right up and said, "No, snake made me." None of the excuses were accepted. Suddenly man was cursed, a great curse God issues. All kinds of ramifications. In the very next chapter, chapter 4 chapters into eternity, man sinned. Chapter 1 was God. Chapter 2, man and woman was created. Chapter 3, they sinned. First thing right out of the gates. Chapter 4, we have our first homicide. Not between 2 dreaded enemies, but between brothers. Who nursed at the same breasts, who played with the same toys, who grew up with the same parents. Of course, those parents were an example of sin. And one followed. 3 fields failed. 1 field stayed true, but paid for it with his life. Just like Jesus said. 3 fields failed. 1 produced a little, but even he was destroyed for him. Of 10 men, there will be 7 who will fail right off the bat. Of the 3 remaining, 2 will consider seriously, but only 1 will follow to the cross. Of the 11 men, 1 went to the cross. The exam's not over yet. Continues next week. And you're going to see that in chapter 19. Then it's finished. Come chapter 20. 21, we have a little makeup exam because there was one casualty back here. Oh, right here, Peter. Who acted impetuously, as was his character, and leaped before he looked, spoke before he considered. Jesus is going to ask him again, what do you want? It's a question I asked you way back there. Make a decision. Okay? Sooner or later, ladies and gentlemen, every single one of you will need to make that decision.
Yeah, we can make the chips.
And that decision will render the final judgment.